We're on air. All right, well, we're running a little late this evening. Apologize about that to the public. Just getting some business finished up, but welcome to the Tuesday, December 6th, 2022 regularly scheduled Selectmen's meeting. We're gonna start the meeting off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Oh, where'd Tim go? This person's gone. Oh, for a minute, well, he'll be back. In the back room, okay, he's right there. All right, moving on, we have municipal officers workshop, business, public hearings. First of which is Court Distributors Inc., DBA for the Love of Food and Drink, 411 Post Road, Wells, application for a full-time malt, wine, and spirits liquor license. Anybody from the public like to speak on this? No, we do, yeah, public hearing, yeah. Seeing none?
Move to close the public hearing and grant the license.
Second.
All those in favor? Tim? 4-0, thank you. Next, we have Court Distributors Inc., DBA for the Love of Food and Drink, 411 Post Road, Wells, application for a special entertainment permit. Any members of the public like to speak on this? Seeing none?
Move to close the public hearing and grant the license.
Second.
Oh, sorry, Bob.
All those in favor? 4-0. Next, we have Francesco I'm gonna butcher this, Deganji, DBA Seacoast Pizza and Pasta, 901 Post Road, Wells, application for a full-time malt and wine liquor license. Any members of the public? Seeing none?
Move to close the public hearing and grant the license.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Next, we have Wells Elks Lodge 2738, 356 Bald Hill Road, Wells, application for a full-time malt, wine, and spirits liquor license. Any members of the public? Seeing none?
I move to close the public hearing and grant the license.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Lastly, we have Wells Elks Lodge 2738, 356 Bald Hill Road, Wells, application for a special entertainment permit. Any members of the public? Seeing none?
I move to close the public hearing and grant the license.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. And we're on to good news. Mike, wanna kick us off, honey?
Well, all I can say is I've had a really great next week, and I had a wonderful meeting yesterday with York County Community College, met with their president, and we had some really wonderful dialogue about some initiatives we may be able to share. I've really had a very positive experience with all of our staff. We've had a third department head meeting, I believe, today, and I think we're all moving in unison, so that's my good news for right now.
Good. Well, I had we attended the tree lighting the other day. It's very well put together. Wanted to thank Rebecca for that. Did a good job and
Great.
yeah, it was a great time. So, anything from the board? No? Well, seeing none, we'll move on to open to the public for the first time this evening. Any members of the public like to speak at this time? Yes, keep it to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on to current agenda items. First of which is review and action on accounts payable and payroll warrants. Any discussion from the board, concerns? No?
Move to approve and sign the accounts payable warrant dated December 6, 2022 in the amount of $1,396,368.61 and the general assistance warrant dated December 6, 2022 in the amount of $6,786.90.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Next, we have update, discussion, and action on committees, projects, issues, purchases, and personnels. The first is a presentation for the train station second platform improvement project. We have Patricia Quinn.
We do, hello, and I'm waiting for my technical assistance here. I did bring some slides to show you, but I don't know if they'll make it up or not. Yeah, we can check on them, but I can get started in the meantime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Would you like me to stand over here?
You can come right up here if you want, that'd be good.
Yeah, have a seat.
Thanks. Okay, so thank you everybody for having us here today. My name is Patricia Quinn. I'm the Executive Director of the Northern New England Passenger Rail Authority, and I'll just go through some background to start so you know who we are and what we do. So NEPR is a quasi-government agency that was established to restore and manage the operation of passenger rail in the state of Maine. We were established in the late 1990s. We report to a board of directors that's appointed by the governor of the state of Maine and also includes the Commissioner of Transportation and the Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development. Our role and what we do is our mission is to manage passenger rail service to and within the state of Maine. And we focus on our priorities of passengers, partnerships, performance, promotion, projects, and public benefit. Little alliteration there, just to talk about the things that we do. So everything that's kind of top of rail. The Downeaster service, and we can flick through about 5 slides, I think. Flick through, yep, so keep going, one more, there we go, perfect. Okay, so the Downeaster makes 5 round trips every day between Brunswick and Boston. It operates over routes of 143 miles. The service is operated using 3 Amtrak train sets and operates at speeds up to 79 miles an hour. We also operate over 3 host railroads, and what I mean by host railroads is the train tracks are owned by private entities and not by us, so we're tenants on the track. Actually, Amtrak is on our behalf. The service stops at 12 station communities in 3 states, and last year carried over 400,000 people, more than that prior, but we're building our way back. Go ahead. So NEPR holds operating agreements with several operating partners, so Amtrak. So in terms of what we do, we're kind of the public entity that's kind of the business managers of the service, and then we have a contract with Amtrak to actually operate the service. So the services are actually operated with Amtrak train sets, Amtrak crews, and we use the Amtrak reservation system. CSX Transportation and the MBTA, that you see the next, those are the 2 major host railroads over which we operate. The MBTA is in the state of Massachusetts, and then starting at the New Hampshire state line all the way through is CSX Transportation, formerly Pan Am Railways. Nextdyne is our food service vendor, so we manage cafe service, and the Downeaster is the only Amtrak train in the country with independently operated food service, and we do that. And then we also coordinate with the station communities to provide station services like we do in Wells. So you can skip ahead 2 here. There we go, one more. So just a little bit about performance, what we do. The Downeaster's been operating for almost 21 years. Our anniversary is December 15th. It'll be 21 years. And in that time, we've carried 8.3 million riders, the equivalent of 676 million passenger miles, and have collected $230 million in ticket revenue. I'll go back a little bit, go ahead, and you can see in 2019, when kind of the world stopped for us, our fiscal year runs from July through June. In 2019, pre-pandemic, our ridership was over 500,000 passengers. We collected over $10 million in ticket revenue and was about 45 million passenger miles a year. Obviously, getting into the pandemic, things changed, and this next slide kind of shows where we were since then. So on the left-hand side, and this is a little hard to see, is ridership. So you can see, I just did January through October because this post-pandemic, things have changed so much. So starting in calendar year 12, January through October, in 2012, you can see where our ridership is in the 400,000s. And then you see that big dip there in calendar year 20, and that's when the pandemic hit. So we only transported 135,000 passengers. But the good news story, and what I really want to show you, is that service is really rebounding at an amazing rate. And we're now at about 90% of where we were in 2019. The first 10 months of this year, of calendar year 2022, we've transported about 393,000 passengers. And on the revenue side, which is the box on the right, even better, our revenue is almost back to where it was in 2019. Okay, in the next slide, we talk about what does that mean to Wells. Well, in the last 10 months, 41,017 passengers have traveled to or from Wells Station. So just to give you an idea of the magnitude, pre-pandemic compared to fiscal year 19 was about 55,000. So we're about 85% back. But you can see, there's a lot of people use that station, and it's really a combination, if you want to flip through, of a little bit of everything: young people, old people, people going to work, people going to events, school kids, college students. And one of the reasons I think the Downeaster service has rebounded is because we appeal to a wide range of people. One of the other important things that we do is we manage capital projects. And in fact, over the course of the last 21 years, we've managed over $168 million in capital projects. So while we're here talking about the project that we have going on now, I just want you to know we're a pretty well-oiled machine. We've done a lot of it, and we've gotten a lot done. So we've built a good, successful service. And what we really wanted to do, kind of leading into 2019, is diversify our market base even more, so that we can provide more value to the people of Maine, and looked at ways to make the service more reliable, and to add more frequency. And one of the challenges that we have is that because of the way the trains cycle, the first train that travels north into Portland, because all the trains kind of stay overnight in Brunswick and go to Boston and then cycle back and forth. So the first train that comes into Portland from the south in the morning isn't until 11:30 in the morning. So it's not really a good way. People from this area can't commute to Portland and to get to work. So we wanted to look at some ways to change that and do some other things. So we've identified some projects. So we have 3 major projects that are in the pipeline. 2 are in the pipeline and one's actually happening. The 2 that are in the pipeline is we want to relocate Portland Station. It's currently located on a branch line. We're going to relocate it. It's going to save 15 minutes of travel time. We want to add 1 station in West Falmouth. But the other project that is our priority project, because it's funded and it's underway, is what we call the Wells Area Improvement Project. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Go ahead and go one more. So the Wells Area Improvement Project is a project that we applied for money in 2019 for funding. We were granted the funding in 2020 through a program through the Federal Railroad Administration called CRISI. And then the grant was obligated in December of 2021. The project has 3 major components. The first is to extend double track. So this looks probably very familiar to you. Here it is, Wells Station, there's a train there. So there's 2 tracks in front of Wells Station, but that second track, not the one the train is on, the other one where the arrow is only 2 miles long. So it's it doesn't create a lot of opportunities for long trains to pass each other like freight trains. So it really kind of even though there's 2 tracks there, it's a little bit of a bottleneck. So we're going to extend that by 6 miles. So it's going to be 8 miles of double track, so that 2-mile long freight trains traveling at 60 miles an hour can pass each other, and it alleviates bottlenecks. What we also want to do is we want to build a second passenger platform. Because if we have a northbound train and a southbound train that meet in that location, people can only get off or on 1 train at a time. So one has to park there, and then one stops and goes, the other one has to back up, pull into the station. So if we put a passenger platform on the other side, then 2 trains in opposing directions can pull up, and people can get on and off of them, and the trains can go on without delay. So we're going to build that second passenger platform across the way. But of course, you can't walk across the railroad tracks because that's not very safe. So in order to get the people from where the station facility is and the station building is to the second track, we have to build what we're calling a pedestrian bridge to access that second track. So the initial project budget, if you want to move along, is $23 million. We did get, as I said, from the Federal Railroad Administration, $16.9 million from a CRISI program. It was awarded to us in 2020. Pan Am and now CSX is contributing $1.5 million in labor to complete the project, and the Maine Department of Transportation is contributing $4.6 million in cash. We held a groundbreaking for the event almost a year ago on our 20th anniversary, and there's a lot of support for this project. And I showed that picture because, Governor Mills was here, representatives, our congressional delegation was here, Commissioner of Maine DOT, NEPR, our board of directors, the Wells town officials were here, folks from the Maine Turnpike Authority, because obviously Maine Turnpike owns some of that property. The executive director of the Federal Railroad Administration was here. The head of state supported service for Amtrak was here, and CSX was here too. So this is a project that really has a lot of support. We're anxious to get it underway. So with that, I'm actually going to step aside for a moment and introduce you to Jim Russell. Jim Russell is the project manager for NEPR, and he can walk you through some of the components of the project and some of the pieces that we have, and answer any questions.
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief. As Patricia mentioned, the project, the Wells siding portion of the project we have 2 different distinct portions. The siding, which is extending at 6 miles to what we refer to as Railroad West. That's the siding piece, and then the platform piece. The siding piece is underway, and you probably have seen some of the equipment out working on the right of way, probably most obviously maybe at Willie Hill Road, if anybody goes to your transfer station. Because the project essentially is beginning, the 6 mile extension is, if we were standing at Willie Hill Road and looking back to what we call the Railroad East, and you could almost see Wells Station, that's where the existing double track ends today. And that's where this additional 6 miles is gonna connect to that existing 2 miles and then follow all the way to and almost across what we call Varney's Crossing, which is the Route 9 crossing down in North Berwick. So it's gonna go across, there'll be a second track installed at Willie Hill Road that will extend that second siding across Willie Hill Road. And then there'll also be a second crossing at the Bragdon Road, as well as at Main Street down in Berwick. So those 3 grade crossings will have an additional track across those, and the signal systems will be moved to protect those crossings with the additional trackage. So that project, as I mentioned, is well underway. We had that Shaw Brothers of South Portland is the general contractor who's been working out there since springtime. Preparing the subgrade for the future track. That involves cutting the subgrade. Some of these pictures are just what they began with, as you're kind of seeing, they had to cut trees to start with. All this, and just for a general reference, all this new track is being built on what was formerly a second track back in the history of the Maine Central and the Boston and Maine. The second track was removed back in the past. I don't have an exact date when that was removed. It was likely probably in the 70s that they took up that second track. But we're reestablishing where that historical footprint once was, and why that is generally important is the embankment and the roadbed is already there. So that the permitting was fairly straightforward because we didn't have any outside the right-of-way impacts to construct this new track. What this is a piece of the track extension was a rehabilitation of a culvert down in North Berwick. This one's just what we would call Railroad East of the Varneys or the Route 9 crossing down in North Berwick. This one, there was an old stone box culvert that was in advanced stages towards collapsing. And so before we were going to extend anything over the top, of course, we needed to repair this. So that work took place this summer, and it's all done and completed by the permit window, which was essentially the end of September for the low water period, and that's complete. And now what you might see if we were out there is they're continuing to cut subgrade and push ballast out to build the roadbed that will then be where CSX will come in next construction season and start to assemble track to build out that 6 miles over the top of what Shaw Brothers is preparing. So that in a nutshell is where we're at for the siding project. Just as a general, and I'll let Tim take the floor here in a minute on the platform piece, just relative to the schedule. We anticipate having the siding work, the contractor's work will be done more or less by the end of this year. And then CSX track department will be constructing the track over the course of next construction season and potentially into the 24 season, as well as installing the signal system that needs to be built out throughout this whole 6 miles so that trains can run at speed safely, of course, and to the standards that we need. So, and then the platform piece, Tim's gonna go into it a little in a minute, but that's in design right now. We're at a 50% point. Stakeholders, we had a recent stakeholder meeting to get everyone's buy-in and comments. That's intended to go out to bid spring for release and for construction in hopefully mid-summer at latest. And that's anticipated to take about a year or so to construct. So with that, I guess I'll just, unless anybody has any questions about the siding specific and the work that's going on today, I'm happy to answer those questions and any other question you might have. But Tim is gonna give us a little presentation relative to the platform and the up and over, as Patricia referenced, the pedestrian bridge and the stair towers and the elevator towers that are gonna be a part of this infrastructure that supports the second platform, so.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
When you build this down, are you then responsible for, we get a lot of complaints, I don't know if anybody, of the railroad crossings themselves. Especially the one on Bragdon Road is
Horrible.
horrible, and so I hear that a lot from our townspeople. Will be that redone nicer, so that
It'll
cars
be
can jump?
resurfaced, yes, as a part of that. There'll be a brand new track that's installed, and then that existing track will get resurfaced and repaved. So the roadway will be improved for the traveling public,
Alright, thank you.
because I don't believe that one has been touched since around 2001, when the original, what they call the original NEPR project, when the service started back in 2001, they did it just prior to that, so it's in need, for sure,
Thank you.
absolutely.
So VHB is our engineering firm of record on this, for NEPR and on this project, so Tim Bryant is here to talk about the platform, design and development. I just wanna explain here this little schematic here that shows the station, you can see the existing station building and the access. In the dark blue, that's kind of the existing low-level platform, which kind of looks like a sidewalk, but it's got a canopy over it. And then most passengers get on and off the train from what we call the high-level platform, which does that lighter blue area. So what's gonna be added is another set of platforms, blue across the track, and then some orange. The orange, you're gonna see the towers that are gonna go up. But the important thing is that just about all of this, everything that's gonna be constructed on the station side of the track, that's Maine Turnpike Authority property, and we've been engaged with Maine Turnpike all along, and they're very involved in this project. So we'll be leasing land to build the tower, the new elevator tower. And then on the other side, all of that is happening within the railroad right-of-way on the other side of the track. There is one little section there next to the elevator tower on the south side or on the non-station side that will be used for a laydown area for construction. That's some town property that we'll need to clear. And then it worked out that that's also a great location. We're gonna leave that area cleared when we're done. And that's gonna become the area of refuge, because per code, we need an area of refuge so folks aren't stranded on the platform, that they have a place to get off in the event a train that's on fire pulls into the station, which I hesitate to even say that out loud because it scares the daylights out of me to think about it. But anyway, it's not gonna happen, but we're gonna have an area of refuge that we're never gonna have to use. But it's gonna be in that property, but that's really the only parcel of town property that's impacted by this. So Tim, you wanna talk
Yeah.
about the station design?
Yeah, and actually, if you can scroll to the next slide, thanks, Patricia. So that's, excuse me, kind of a schematic. This is the actual 50% site civil plan that we have developed for this. So as Patricia said, the existing station is towards the top of the screen. You can see that kind of darker gray walkway that comes over to what is our new stair and elevator tower that will provide ADA accessible access across the tracks on essentially a pedestrian bridge that's gonna come over to a sister tower on the other side that will take you down to a longer high-level platform than we have on the other side. We're extending the platform on this side, so the overall footprint of the high and the low platform is about the same, but we're gonna have more high-level platform, which gives more flexibility for loading and unloading passengers. So at the end of that, excuse me, high-level platform, we have a ramp that comes down back to grade, right there, to a paved, essentially a paved sidewalk that goes out to the point of safety, which is essentially, itself just a paved area with a light and an emergency call box. And we need to have that there, as Patricia said, by code requirement, because there is no public access on that side of the tracks. If there was a parking lot, if there was a city street over there, we wouldn't need to have the point of safety because people could just exit into the neighborhood or whatever might be there. But because that is a large wooded area where there's nowhere to go, we have to provide that so that people can shelter in case of some kind of an emergency safely, minimum of 50 feet from the hazard, which could be at the station, which could be a burning coach or an engine. there. So that's what that is. It's very simple. It's essentially just gonna be, you know, a paved area down on the sidewalk there. That, so, you know, now what I can do is I can just show you some of what we have for the 50% design. We have some renderings of what the station will look like. What we're proposing to do at this point for finishes is we're gonna have a fiber cement exterior panel with cross-laminated timber structure. So underneath those canopies and in the roof, we're gonna have structural timber, heavy timber, which you know is a nice architectural look that we're looking to achieve there, while also being, you know, low maintenance and durable. Do that. So go ahead and scroll. We have a couple more views from different angles. That's in front of the existing station building, you know, looking towards the up and over. We are gonna be replacing the existing green metal roofed canopies that are there now, and we're gonna be replacing the high level platform in order to accommodate the new construction on that side of the tracks, but the low level platform will remain. So just a few more views there. These are some renderings of what it will look like inside. You can see the cross-laminated timber finishes that we're proposing, both for the wall panels and in the roof. So, you know, this is where we're at with kind of our overall schedule. As Jim mentioned, the siding extension piece is gonna be wrapping up at the end of this year, and then the CSX team is gonna come out next year and actually put the tracks in for that second track. We're hoping to get out to bid in the spring for the platform and tower piece and get that in construction. We're expecting a late summer, early fall to probably start for the construction of that, and looking to have all construction completed in 2024 so that we can have a ribbon cutting, which you'll all be invited to.
And the other important piece of this project is, as a result of this project, in addition to the improved reliability and improved access and all of those things, it's gonna enable us to operate a 6th daily round trip, which is where I started and get back to. So there's gonna be a 6th train that's gonna start out of Brunswick early in the morning, come down into Wells early, and then get people into Portland somewhere around 8 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and then we'll have a partner on the other end, so that folks from from New Hampshire Seacoast area, from southern Maine, from Saco can all get into Portland and or Brunswick or Freeport and get into Maine for a workday commute. So there's a lot of practical benefits to this as well that we you know, hope to have. Also, as part of this kind of in conjunction with the project but separate, Amtrak and CSX are working to upgrade the entire signal system of the entire line. That's a separately funded project, but it works well with this. So the entire line is gonna have positive train control, which is an enhanced level of safety, which will eventually enable the Downeaster trains to go faster and potentially even more frequency. We haven't gotten there yet, but it's kind of like air traffic control for trains. Or cruise control for trains, and it'll improve the safety of the entire line. So a lot of good things coming, and we appreciate the opportunity to give you an update. Wanted to introduce you to our team. Will Gale, who's our Director of Policy and Administration, is also here, who manages our grants. Introduce ourselves, and if you have any questions at all, and obviously Carol Murray is a member of our Board of Directors and has been involved in this process and on the ground with it for the past couple of years. And so we're happy to answer any questions, provide you with any information, and if you wanna tour the site sometime, you can give Jim a holler.
But don't stress that.
Yeah, don't cry, yeah. Call him first. Any questions or?
No, thank you. I think it's
Thank you, very
good.
good.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentations, very informative and good updates.
And we do have some handouts that we forgot, but we'll get those to you tomorrow, and we'll leave them in the mailbox, so you'll have a copy of this presentation, so if you have any follow-up questions, you can just give us a shout.
Well, sounds
Thank
good. Thank you very much. Excellent. Well, it'll be exciting to see Cool. Next, we'll move on to discussion and action on license conditions for Near Beach Motel. Attorney Orsowa?
Mind if we sit over here?
Yeah, absolutely, go right ahead. Yeah.
Next to you.
Kathy's seat right here.
This is the name tag there for you.
Yeah. Hand that down real quick, that'd be good.
Just so you. No, I get it real good.
I wanna get out of here before they start giving me a name tag.
We have one made up.
Yeah, that's why I say I'm here too long if I
Just
get a
gonna-
name tag.
I'm gonna ask Jodine to come up and join us too, just in case any questions come up. Good. Well, good evening. If you could go ahead and, I don't know who wants to get us started, but
Well, I've had an opportunity, Attorney Gay was kind enough to send over findings of fact last week and conclusions. And I'm happy to go through them, they're just a few mostly ministerial things. And then a couple things at the end I just wanna discuss, just have a little bit of discussion on. But I don't have any desire to go through paragraph by paragraph unless somebody does. Just the ministerial stuff. Number one, the actual license, or it's the license that is 7, but the owner is not 7. Yeah.
Licenses,
Okay, so just on the first one, the owner of the real estate is 7 Shri Bhagwati. The license itself doesn't go through 7 Shri Bhagwati, it's just Shri Bhagwati. So I don't know whether we wanna identify that somewhere on there, as the licensee is different from the owner.
So I'm sorry, so can you tell me the licensee is who?
Is Shri Bhagwati, it's no 7 in front of it. The owner is the 7, so we can put an additional person or additional entity as the licensee on that. And in fairness to Bit2, who has been very faithful throughout this process, he has 2 T's in his name.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's no problem, I just, he didn't even bring it up, he wouldn't bring it up, but I just wanted to identify that. And I'm just gonna go down the different pages if that's all right. Page 3, I've nothing on page 2, page 3. Saying this just makes reference in 13 to a site plan. And there isn't a site plan.
Right, basically, I took that directly from that September 1st.
Yeah, I don't know what we wanna do with that though, but there
is.
isn't a site plan. We're creating an as-built plan, which we'll go through in a minute, which I think we have a pretty good start on. But there isn't a site plan, so I don't know.
So the last sentence says the notice also indicated that there was no site.
Yeah,
plan on the property.
and I'm fine, I think we just wanna reconcile that somehow. It's just however you wanna do that, if everyone's comfortable with that last sentence, clearing that up, that's fine with me. I just, when I read it first time, it just jumped out at me. And then on number 14, there's Bit2's name again. And then going back now through all the way to F, it's on page 6. The the only substantive heartburn with this section, with this whole document is section FI. And only because we still don't have enough information on our own, my client's hired an expert to assist with that. And I guess from my perspective, anything that he does on the property is subject to you guys giving the approval or not, and you're not gonna allow him to open up anyway. So I guess my only point with this is I wanna leave open the possibility that there is something other than this monitored alarm system that can do the same job and can satisfy Chief, can satisfy Jodine, can satisfy the expert, the fire expert that has to do the approval. And the reason I say it is because having done a little research on this now, number one, we have cost and time. And costs, has varied, a couple different experts I've talked to, anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. And the timing has been also a great concern because a couple of them said, if we're gonna have that work done, it's probably gonna take 6 months or so to get everything rewired, to get everything up and running. And I guess I just wanna leave open the option of us coming back to you with, okay, here's sort of either a staggered plan of how we wanna do it so that we can reopen in April, for example, as opposed to, and not having all the work done. Or here is some sort of, here's an alternative plan that the chief approves, that Jodine approves, that the fire expert approves, and we want you to review. So it's not to say that anything is off the table for purposes of what we wanna do, but we just wanna leave open the option. There's nothing we can do on the site, thankfully, and I should have started with this, no one else is on the site. Everybody's gone, so and I should have opened up with that, so you at least smiled at the beginning. All of the people are off the site except for Bit2. We can all feel bad for him, I guess, but everybody else is gone, all the evictions are done. That's, everybody got out of there and there's no other pending legal matters with regard to that. So Paul and Bit2 and his staff did a great job on that, that was nothing I did, they really hit the ground running with that stuff and we're able to do a great job on that. So there is no, the language in that first one also allows, because we talked about this before, unless the board subsequently determines otherwise upon further consideration. So there's no real heartburn with the language, I just wanted to bring that up again and say we are looking at all options. And obviously, we have to come before you to get our license or to get the ability to open up. So we're just, it's just, we're educating ourselves on that process and it's just a little bit more detailed than initially I thought it was with regard to all the different components of it. There's a huge wiring component of it that would require, things that go beyond just the fire alarm and CO detector. So that's something he's hired an expert to help with that, and that's something that he's in consideration of right now.
So it's not the actual system, it's just the timing of which that you're worried about.
Yeah, the timing and what that would all entail. I mean, the reality is that if we can, I guess what I would say is, if we can provide a solution that doesn't, that meets all the requirements here, but is not defined as a monitored alarm system, that satisfies the board, that satisfies the chief, that satisfies Jodine, and satisfies our fire expert, that's independent fire expert, then I wanna leave open that option to do that.
I think the option's in there.
Yeah, no, I agree, I just wanted to bring that up so that we're diligently pursuing this, but I just wanted to identify that. There is on 2, FI or FII, no issues. The only thing that Paul's expert pointed out was that we wanted to have two things. We wanted to take into account the grandfathered nature of the site in the sense of these fire requirements. And that's not to make it less safe, but for example, if you had a situation where the current NFPA requirements allowed buildings that were already existing certain requirements that we're still allowed to do that, we don't have that same issue of a site plan, I guess what we talked about is that there has to be consideration of what specifically in the NFPA are we required to comply with. And again, it's above my pay grade, so it'd be something I think that our expert would work with the chief on to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that. And I'll give an example. If the NFPA, if the new building was built today and the NFPA had requirements, that we're not gonna be required to meet all of those because we're not a new building. And, and I guess that's one of the issues that comes up, and I don't know, Chief, obviously you can.
May I? Yeah, the way the code is, the way the code is written, NFPA 101 Life Safety Code is written with two sections. One section is new buildings, and then the second section is existing.
Yep.
So the 2018 would have everything that an existing facility like yours would have to have.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah.
Okay.
See, that's why we have smart guys like the chief here.
Thanks.
So, thank you, chief. So anyway, so just moving forward, we're all on board, motels closed, and it's likely gonna be, might very well be closed beyond February 28th, obviously, we understand that. And then the other part of this is the board will revisit the question whether it will require annual opening and closing dates during the annual license renewal, and that'll be something that's deferred till then. We moving forward in the future, we would hope to present to you a plan that would allow that middle building to stay open for a period of time. The 17 units, the middle building, the water's running to there, Bit2 staying there, so but that's something we'll address in the future, not anything we need to address now. The site plan, or the existing conditions as built plan, and Paul was looking through his notes, and he actually, we're gonna have, when he bought the building, he was provided a plan, existing conditions plan that's very detailed by the previous owner. What we are going to do is, and he showed this to me today, and this, we're gonna run this by Jodine and the chief, and likely, and we're gonna make it look better. We're gonna get an engineer to certify it, but it's likely very much of what you want. I mean, it's something that was put together, identifies all the buildings, everything on there, where all the components of the land are. And we're gonna put it on a better, we're gonna get someone to certify that that's where it is, and put it on a regular plan for you, and then have it reviewed by Jody and the chief. But I think you'd be satisfied with that. And I think the good news is, I think we might already have that someone can just go out on the site and walk around and just say, okay, that is there, and provide you with where everything is, where the hot water is, heater is, where all these other things are on the property, where all the units are. And it identifies the 43 units. It identifies there's 4
Would you mind just handing that down?
Oh, absolutely. I have copies of it if you'd like to. I just didn't want you to think that I was doing this on my car outside. It's just sort of a handwritten document, but like we said, we're gonna have someone go out on site, certify it, and put it on a plan that they will provide to the town.
Any questions or comments from the board on that
I
one?
mean, I think getting it cleaned up and more professionally done, I think it's exactly what we wanted to see.
Yeah, that's just what same thing I said to him. We just want to be professionally done, have someone go out there and certify it, say that's, just so you don't think it's, we were doing it, this came from the previous owner, and it's, as Paul said, it's pretty accurate, and it certainly will clearly identify the 43, 43 hotel units, and then the 4 separate apartments on there too. So that's very clear for everyone going forward, and then there's something that's in the town's file that identifies this property, and it's something that can be reviewed in the event there are any issues in the future. Other than that, nothing else to comment on the, anything else you wanna say? Nothing else to comment on the draft. I think it was obviously Sandy did a great job, and there doesn't seem to be anything else for us.
From the board? Town?
Jodine and I have conferred and we're fine with as drafted.
I did actually notice a couple of typos, when I was going through it that I'll correct. One's on, 18. The second sentence I had put, says about the posting and that there would be, but it was supposed to be that, near Beach Motel would be placed on the Board of Selectmen, so that was just a typo that I will correct, just so you know. and a bracket left it off at the end of paragraph 20.
There's I mean, if it's okay with you, Sandy, I didn't wanna do it because it's sort of presumptuous when somebody sends you back a document that has stupid little typos on it, fixed. There are a few that just, there's a reference to bit two that has his last name is Patel also.
Okay.
So I'll just, if
That's
it's
fine,
okay,
yeah.
I'll just email that to you, red line.
I would assume we can approve this with the typographical changes.
Yes, I mean, they're really minor, they're, you know, the only thing that will be added to this then is that the licensee is Shri Bhagwati. So I'll add that in as well.
But it doesn't prohibit us from going forward tonight.
No. You just say as corrected.
Well, if there's no more comments, questions or concerns, do we have a motion to approve as
What-
corrected?
What do we want to do with that site plan reference? I think it's referencing the fact that a letter was sent to them saying that there was something on the site plan. It must have been an error because there's not a site plan, but how do we wanna handle that?
Well, I think that says that the notice also indicated there was no site plan on file. And that's really all we know. Presumably, there was no site plan, but really the testimony was it's not on files, that nobody's found one.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably correct as written, but.
As to the second question about changes to the proposed monitoring system, I think the option is already there. So we don't need to make any other changes there, so we're,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Mr. Foley pointed that out and I think he's accurate.
I'll make a motion that we approve this with the typographical errors corrected as proposed.
All those in favor? 4-0. Well, thank you, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Give everybody a second to. Let's put Kathy's name back around. Next, we'll move on to discussion and action on proposed agreement for workforce housing covenants among High Pine Properties LLC, York Housing Authority, and the Town of Wells. We'll invite Attorney Carlton up this time. So Attorney Carlton, at the last meeting, we had some questions for you, some points of clarification. If you could kind of walk us through what's gone on, that would be excellent.
Thank you. Howard Hollisdale, he's can't be here this evening. Just to remind everybody, this is a 120 unit workforce housing project designed for people who earn households whose income is less than 120% of the average, the median income for the Wells area. The project is being built. The purchase price of these units is set initially at $250,000 and $237,000, which is about $150,000 less than market price. Part of the conditions for doing this are that the project is subject to covenants. People can buy, they're limited as to the resale price when they sell. The idea is to keep it as affordable workforce housing for people of moderate means. Now, part of the project, which we thought was a plus, was that there's money through the federal government flowing down through the state for subsidies. They go initially to the developer and then they flow through that would be used to reduce the purchase price of these units, perhaps by $10,000 per unit. Maine Housing Authority administers this grant. High Pine Properties got a conditional approval for $1.4 million to help along with this effort. And we have been negotiating with them for months about just what the covenant should say. I think it's true that, I think I can say that we profoundly disagree with the conclusions of Maine Housing about what is supposed to go into these covenants, what can go into these covenants. What finally happened is that Maine Housing sent us down a set of covenants that they would agree to. And we felt compelled to pass this along to the town. The covenants call for the town to be what's called a qualified holder, to undertake some responsibilities and some expenses, incur some expenses in enforcing these covenants. There are restrictions that say basically, you know, these are for people's principal residence, you can't, you know, use it as income property. Various other things. There's an enforcement component of all of this. Who's gonna enforce these covenants, and you know, is judicial action really a realistic option when it takes 3 or 4 years to go through court? So York Housing, which runs affordable rental housing in York, is taking care of the bulk of the work. In other words, qualifying people, making sure that they don't exceed the maximum household income when they buy. They approve what is called a transfer certificate, which is required to sell. When people sell, must go with the deed. The idea being to keep these covenants affordable in perpetuity. In other words, you can only sell for an amount which tracks the rise in the average income in the area. Great idea, but Maine Housing has said that the town needs to be involved in some of these other enforcement enterprises, actions, in case they're needed. So that's why we passed along the Maine Housing covenants to the town to see if they would undertake these duties. There's a lot more detail to this, which I can get into if you wish.
Well, I guess my question is specifically spelled out what duties for the town?
Duties of the town.
What's York Housing going to look at? What's the town going to be responsible for?
It's basically.
Mr. Chairman, can I amplify on your, just follow on your question?
Yes, please do.
I understand, Joe, that you know, the duties are outlined in the covenants, right?
They are.
And that originally that York Housing under a prior version, the earlier version, that York Housing was gonna take on those administrative burdens that you talked about. But in this most recent one, it says that the town is also responsible and that we have to divvy up those responsibilities as between York Housing and the town. Did you have subsequent conversations with York Housing to say, yep, we're still on board, we'll still do what we originally said we would?
I have not been able to contact York Housing. They're very difficult to get in contact with. I've called them a number of times and sometimes I get through to them, but the decision is always, I have to go get permission from my supervisor. That particular condition had not been discussed before. It was new with the latest draft that Maine Housing came down with.
What was the reasoning for that?
What was the reasoning for that? I don't know.
Yeah, it does sound like a silly question, but I mean, we had covenants before that didn't do that, and now they sent back this onerous issue for the town to have to grapple with, which makes absolutely no sense. I mean, when they had an entity that they've dealt with before on affordable housing to oversee these, and now all of a sudden, they want the town to be involved as well as York Housing.
To be fair, York Housing never agreed to undertake everything that needed to be done. Their experience down in York is with the rental housing projects, some of which they own. They are experienced in doing the investigation necessary to qualify people to buy the units. And they agreed to do that and a couple of other things. They explicitly said that they were not interested in enforcement outside of their service area. We went back to them and to get them to undertake a couple more duties, but they made it clear to us that going further was a bridge too far for them. So after a lot of back and forth, Maine Housing sent down its proposal. There may be options. We're thinking through what those options might be to get the housing project, going again, even without the grant from Maine Housing Authority. I mean, the project will go forward without the subsidy from Maine Housing Authority if need be, but of course, nobody likes to put $1.4 million off the table, and so we would certainly like to.
It doesn't also benefit the owners of the buyers dealing with Maine State Housing, and they get some qualified mortgage, lower rate mortgages if they deal first-time home buyers?
First-time home buyer program of Maine Housing Authority is a separate program. The subsidy we're talking about goes to the developer and then on down to the buyers when is part of the purchase price. The first home mortgage program is a separate program which helps buyers help pay the closing costs and part of the down payment, totally separate. We hope that some people may qualify for the first home buyer program, but it's not assured. In any event, it's up to the individual buyers to see if they can qualify for that assistance. And like everything else in this project, it's complicated.
Do you think there might be an opportunity to bring York Housing to the table to workshop with us so we can divvy up these responsibilities? I think this is a great project, but there's just so much up in the air that we don't know what we're responsible for.
To answer your question directly, I don't think that York Housing Authority is gonna go further than it has. One of the ideas
Would they sign an agreement?
Yes, they have an agreement. We have a written agreement that sets forth the specific duties that they have undertaken. I don't have it with me. It's
But
3 or 4.
could the town of Wells be included in that agreement that says that York Housing will undertake these and not the town of Wells will not have? Because this current document they sent down to us puts us both responsible.
That's right.
And what I think we're concerned about is if York Housing is willing to do the administrative work, and they've agreed to that, then if they can somehow indemnify us from that sort of stuff and let us concern ourselves with other enforcement issues, if that agreement exists, I think that would be helpful, at least from my standpoint, to understand what it is that we're responsible for and what we won't be dragged in to do.
Well, all I can say is, after extended discussions, this is what Maine Housing came up with. Some other ideas, we're kicking around is, which is not optimal, I don't think, is to take the remaining duties that York Housing is not willing to undertake and make the condominium association responsible for that. And we could do that by putting putting those responsibilities in the condominium declaration and keep them out of the workforce housing covenants and main housing's I altogether. That's a possibility that's occurred to me in the past day or
Don't we,
so.
I mean, if you're looking at this document, Joe, it gives us, the town, the right to assign our duties to any entity that we so choose. So at some point in time down the road, we could choose to assign those duties. I don't know where it is right now, but
Yes, it's
we could
there.
assign that to the association, to the board.
The main housing authority's position is that it could be assigned only to something called a qualified holder, which the condominium association is not. So the answer is no.
I just wanna make sure, so far there's 6 or so houses under contract or so, right?
Yeah, more than that, actually.
Has York Housing done a diligent work on those? Cause you're actually starting to worry me more than I was, because you're saying you can't even get a hold of these people, and now we're depending on them to be a partner in this. Well, we can't even talk to them. Even the own lawyers are admitting they can't, this worries me more.
Well, once York Housing approves the covenants, some covenants, in order for the developer to get the grant, they are out of it. You know, they're here in the beginning. They are, if some covenants are acceptable to them and the grant is given, that's the end of it for York Housing. The financing, the closings, all of the other stuff that's required for this project to move forward rest with the buyers and their purchase contracts and their inspections of the property. And most of all, the lenders, which make their own individual decisions about whether or not somebody qualifies for a loan to buy one of these units. So I think your concern is misplaced. Once we get through the York Housing, or once we ditch the not York Housing, main housing subsidy, it's gone, and you move on. Main housing will not have a continuing role in all of this. They've expressly said they don't wanna continue.
I wasn't even worried about main housing. You're saying, we're trying to go in partnership with York Housing,
Yeah, okay,
but York
sorry.
Housing won't even call you back.
No, main housing won't even call me.
Oh, didn't we ask about York Housing? And I'm getting confused.
No,
Yeah.
York Housing has been very cooperative and very friendly. They've gone beyond what they initially agreed to.
So can we
do.
clarify something, Bob, could you re-ask that question that you asked, that he said York Housing doesn't call him back?
Yeah, I mean, that.
I just, that answer has
I think you made a
to,
mistake.
right, no, but I wanna hear that answer.
If I said York Housing doesn't call me back, I made a
Okay,
mistake.
alright, so that's what, alright, cause that was what concerned me, if York Housing isn't willing to call you back,
So the agreement that Howard has with York Housing that lays out their duties and responsibilities.
Right.
That's a contract
That's a contract.
between Howard or between the development and York Housing.
Right. Certain amount of money to qualify people, to determine their qualifications, and some other duties.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one clarifying question. So my understanding of our back and forth and looking at the covenants is because in order to qualify for this 1.4, that they're insisting upon such covenants, right?
Right.
If, and I'm not suggesting that you should, but if you go the other direction and don't take the grant money, is any of this, what's driving it, this is the grant money. Those covenants can be then negotiated, I know that we're under a tight deadline, but those covenants can then be negotiated as between the town and your client. And at least the heat isn't on the back of everybody's neck, if that's the case, correct?
Right, if main housing, not York Housing, if main housing is out of the picture, then these covenants, which were supplied by Maine Housing, can be thrown out as far as I'm concerned. We're left with just what the covenants should say and whether the covenants meet bank requirements and what's called the secondary mortgage market requirements, Fannie Mae. There are questions about that too. But I think about 15 lenders have issued commitment letters contingent upon Fannie Mae approval. And I talked with the bank today and they hadn't determined that they did comply with Fannie Mae requirements. So that is a bridge that still has to be crossed. Did I answer your question? Yeah, okay. So we have Maine Housing set a deadline of 45 days, which is up in 2 days. They said that we could ask for a 30-day extension to see if something can be worked out, which we're considering. Frankly, Mr. Hall is a little disenchanted with Maine Housing and he may just pass it up, which would be too bad. It's about a $10,000 reduction in purchase price for anybody who qualifies for this housing because Howard has vowed to take any money he gets and apply it to reduce the purchase price of these units. But you can do what you can do, that's all.
That'd be fairly important to know. Am I missing something? Like if he's just gonna pull a plug, why are we even
No,
on Maine Housing one, why are we even doing it? I mean, we're spending a ton of time doing something, he's just gonna say on Thursday, I don't wanna do it.
I'm not saying that he's going to do it. I'm talking about talk.
Yeah.
I would suggest that you not take any action this evening. We will see whether they grant an extension. My sense is that the covenant conditions by Maine Housing are not being greeted warmly by this board. But we wanna keep trying to see if something will work.
My concern is just like I brought up last time, is just that our responsibilities are very clearly Town of Wells responsibilities. There is no ambiguity. And then York Housing Authority responsibilities. If it was in two just columns side by side, that would help. And I have an interest in seeing, my understanding is obviously Mr. Hall doesn't wanna see this not be workforce housing in the future. He wants to see it workforce housing stay that, correct?
He wants workforce housing.
So my interest isn't just with the town having any kind of control over it, is also seeing that this does not turn into later on non-workforce housing and traditional housing. I don't wanna, because this project's already underway, and I think the people in the town of Wells are expecting it to remain as workforce housing in perpetuity.
Yes. Maine Housing's grant says that as far as they're concerned, to get the 1.4 million, you have to, the buyers would be bound and the owners would be bound by the covenants for 15 years only. Mr. Hall wants to make it in perpetuity. There's a possibility that some covenants can some of Maine Housing conditions can apply, and also some of Mr. Hall's other covenants can apply, so that the effect would be that all units would be kept affordable in perpetuity. There are a lot of moving parts. You have Maine Housing, you have town approvals which have already been granted, you have the bank approvals and their conditions, and then you have the secondary mortgage market. And not all of them are perfectly consistent. not all of them are perfectly clear, so that you know in advance what you're looking at. It's a difficult path to navigate through so that everybody's satisfied.
So when you just said something, so, and I totally agree with John and Mr. Hall in that I wanna keep this as workforce housing for the rest, forever.
Yes.
But how do you take $1.4 million? I just wanna understand legally, you guys are the
Yeah.
legal guys, not me. Saying, Mainside Housing saying, if you take this one, you're doing a 15-year on this. It has to stay, these covenants have to stay 15 years, and you're saying, well, I'll take the 1.4 million, but we're gonna go over that. We're gonna keep, is it Mainside Housing to say, that's fine, you can do whatever you want? Because I don't think Maine Housing does that. I don't think they just say, yeah, you do what you want now.
One of the outstanding questions is, you know, the grant is conditioned upon at least 20 units fulfilling certain requirements for workforce housing. The question is whether or not those apply to the other 100 units or not. Whether you can add to some of the requirements that apply to the 20 and make it perpetual instead of just 15 years, or what? We don't have the answers to those questions. What our plan was, okay, Maine Housing says certain covenants only apply for 15 years. What we would like to do is to say, yes, they apply for 15 years for purposes of Maine Housing, but we have additional covenants that cover the period beyond that. It's details. And those particular details can be dealt with, I believe. Some of Maine Housing's requirements are a requirement that the houses be wired so that electric vehicles can be connected up. Another of them is that the houses shall be wired so that it's pre-wired for solar. And those are not requirements that Howard necessarily wants. They add to the cost. And whether it's a permanent benefit for this type of housing, I don't know. I kind of doubt it, actually. So everybody's still confused about it, and frankly, so am I.
Yeah, I'm more confused than I was an hour and a half ago, and I was
Okay.
confused an hour and a half ago, so now.
Maybe we had to wind back the clock. I
Joe,
still,
question for you, if the town agrees to this, and we established a board of, a housing board, for lack of a better word, of, let's say we had 2 planning board members, 2 appeals board members, and a selectman, would they then would that board that we appoint be a qualified holder?
if they're acting on behalf of the town, yes.
Could we appoint the members of the condo association board of directors as our board?
Good question, perhaps. Or you could choose members of the board or unit owners as part of a board to advise the selectmen on what decision they should take as to particular matters. I personally think, another fact to confuse you.
Thanks.
There are two types of enforcement actions as far as I'm concerned. Somebody rents out their house when it's supposed to be their principal residence. Somebody does an Airbnb. Somebody establishes a business. The town has the authority by Maine law to enforce these covenants. It's already there, part of the statute. Judicial action. Judicial action involves going to court for 3 or 4 years, tremendous expense. And it's really not going to be very effective in many cases. The practical way to enforce some of these requirements is to put them in the condominium documents. If it's in the condominium documents, then that's independent of the covenants. And under the Maine Condominium Act, the board can fine owners if they violate them. The fine can be enforced by a lien, which lasts for 6 years. They can deny services to members who are in violation of the rules. So that's the type of thing I'm thinking about as an option. And if we can get by, if we can get it by the secondary mortgage market, then maybe the town would have no responsibility whatsoever. It's with the condominium association. That's a possibility.
I think that's a great option. I mean, the problem, as I see it, is it's gonna take a while to establish a board. Cause you have to sell so many units and get so many, so,
No,
well, that's not,
that's
out of
not
that.
true. The condominium board of directors has to exist from the moment the condominium is formed. And I mean, what's especially attractive about this is that under the Condominium Act, the developer can name the members of the board for 7 years or until 75% of the units are sold. So High Pine Properties can effectively enforce these things till the board gets, till an independently elected board gets up and running and the precedent is set for enforcement.
Isn't it usually the developer is the board of directors until a certain point in time?
Well, the developer is supposed to appoint 3
Themselves.
people on the board,
Yeah.
you know, his son, his grandson, his uncle, you know. The developer can appoint anybody it wants to serve on the board. So I'm talking about this, it's just one of the ideas that's being floated at this point.
The requirements to wire for solar and for cars, for electric cars, the $10,000 figure you gave us earlier, was that a net after the inflation of the cost of the house and a reduction to the purchaser, or is this a wash that we're talking about?
The plan is, and there are contracts signed to sell 2-bedroom houses for $237,000 and 3-bedroom for $250,000. If the money comes in from Maine Housing, Mr. Hall says that he will take the money that comes in from Maine Housing and reduce the purchase price a proportionate amount for each one, which would be in the vicinity of $10,000. Even if there's a contract already signed for $250,000, he would rebate a proportionate amount of the money that comes in from Maine Housing and effectively reduce their purchase price.
So he's already putting in charging for electric vehicles and solar panels?
For the units to count toward the 20, he has to put in those for at least 20 units. He says it costs him about $6,000 to do so. But that's not in addition to the purchase price, that's included in the purchase price for these 20 units, which he would designate,
Understood.
so.
Oh, anything else from the board?
Do we need some more answers?
Yeah, right, there's,
Yeah.
no
I
action
mean-
tonight, but any other?
Yeah, well.
And this could all be mute. If you don't get the extension, it's over.
We don't get the extension,
Or he
it's,
decides not to.
if we don't get the extension, it's over for Maine Housing's
Right.
grant, right? And I will be trying to talk with Maine Housing tomorrow. I've gotta talk with Howard about whether to seek an extension. So I can't commit to anything at this point.
can I clarify, I know Joe, you and I had talked about how it sounds like they gave a 30-day extension from their December 8th. Are you talking about an additional extension?
No, I'm talking about an extension of 30 days from December 8th, 2 days from now.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you had said that was happened already.
Alright, well, there's no action. If they're seeing nothing else from the board, then we'll go ahead and move on. But Leah, can you just make sure to work with Attorney Carlton and Mike, that before we have the meeting again, that the concerns are properly laid out on some sort of documents that the board can review, satisfy, just so there's no, we try to clear the confusion up.
Is it possible to see a copy of the agreement with York Housing as well?
I'll ask Mr. Hall.
But once again though, if there is no extension in the, we
Right.
don't even need to do this.
Well, no, right,
Right,
but
I mean, I don't wanna waste anyone's time here, I'd rather
just before it
wait
goes
and
on,
hear what's gonna happen.
just before it goes on an agenda again, I wanna make sure that all these concerns and all these questions are wrapped up, so we have clear, concise answers.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do that. I just think I need to get a better sense of what
Right.
the confusion is. Right, I understand when we're talking about who's doing what, York Housing, et cetera. Are there any other particular areas that you're really,
I mean, I think what we detailed, I mean, it's,
I mean, I think if Joe comes up with moving these enforcement issues over to the bylaws, it becomes, I mean,
It's all about
we
who's
can sign
enforcing
this
it.
agreement and, but we know somebody else is gonna enforce it.
it's responsibilities, it's just those responsibilities to me, and maybe I missed something, but they're just extremely ambiguous. It's, well, if this happens, you'll be responsible for this, if this happens, it's this, it's,
right, and just to clarify, it's all about who's going to be enforcing. When you said areas of confusion, I didn't know if you wanted to get into the nitty-gritty
well, who's
about-
enforcing and who's enforcing what?
Understood, but you don't care necessarily about the Fannie Mae secondary market, all
No,
of that
don't
stuff.
care.
Okay,
No,
right.
but we
No.
also don't need to be
We care.
qualifying buyers either. I mean, we just need a list of what York Housing is gonna be doing, and if there's a list of what the town's gonna be doing, we should see it.
Right, and if it's something that, if it's something the condo association can do,
Absolutely.
I don't care what the condo association does personally, I mean, maybe you guys, I'm not really interested in here, I wanna hear what the town of Wells has to do, and then also what the town of Wells has to do to make sure that it is workforce housing in perpetuity, that doesn't expire after 15 years and these things are selling for $450,000. Well, maybe that's with inflation, what they'll be for affordable housing at that point, who knows, but
Right.
God forbid.
but anyway,
Joe and I will stay in touch, we've been in pretty close touch all along.
Yeah, we will be in touch and sorry to take up so much time only to come to no conclusion. We'll try to be more succinct next time.
that sounds good, I understand there's a lot of moving parts, I think the rest of the board does too, so we appreciate your time, Attorney Carlton, and good seeing you as always.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Take care.
Let me put this real quick. So next we will move on to discussion and action on a proposed amendment to the Littlefield Solar LLC. Mike, if you could come on up and just state your name for the public at home, that'd be great.
Great, thank you. Peter Van Hemel from Bernstein Shur, here for Littlefield Solar LLC. Thank you. And I hope, due to a lot of advance work by Leah and the town staff, that this is gonna be an extremely boring event for you guys. So I'm gonna work on that. So this is to finalize the reduced sized as-built area of the Littlefield Solar project to its no more than is absolutely necessary size, as shown on that slide, which is from a survey that we've sent to the town. So we've had an as-built survey prepared, which was a requirement of this board, I wanna say about a year ago, I can't remember exactly when it was. When we proposed reducing the size of the lease prior to, sort of in anticipation of the construction. And it was the request and requirement of this board that we complete the construction and then come back and do the reduction at this point. And so we have completed construction, received all certificates of occupancy and inspections, as far as I know. I hope that's a shared understanding. And given notice of commercial operations as of the date of those final inspections and permits, so that lines up fairly neat and tidy. And what you'll see is that the reduced size of the leased area is indeed no more than is absolutely necessary to contain the project, including those areas which are required by permit authorities for buffers. And this results in a recalculation of the rent, which Lee and I have done. Since it's paid on a per square foot basis. But we have specified in a pretty concise lease amendment exactly what we're doing in terms of reducing the lease sized area. And in preparation for this, we had some comments from the town engineer in terms of trying to clarify the survey, which I hope we've addressed satisfactorily. Good. The record reflects nodding from the town engineer. And I think that's about it. I also, Lee and I have a text of a proposed amendment that we've batted back and forth for a week or so here that I think is final, except for one thing, which I noticed, which is a clerical error on my part, which I will show Leah right now, and we will correct it after the fact, which is we went through all this is the last revised version, and I just forgot to update the date of the survey, which you can't read here, but it says November 28th. So we drafted the recital, it's just a recital provision. So we corrected everything else, but then I didn't go back and update the date of the survey in the recital from October 19th, but I caught it while I was waiting here.
Nice.
So we'll fix that. But otherwise, it is not only ready to sign, I actually have a signed version, which we can make a page substitution to address the issue that I just described, but Littlefield Solar has actually sent me here with a signed version. So they are committed and ready to go, and this project is up and running. If there are any questions, please let me know, but otherwise, like I said, I hope we've done the groundwork to make this extremely uneventful.
Is there sufficient area if solar panels have to be maintained to traverse across the outside of the area without infringing upon the area that's not going to be leased at this point?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of space in between the solar panels and the fence. If you've driven by, you've seen that big wire fence that surrounds the entire solar panel area. Jodine and I, in our final inspection for occupancy, we walked around the whole perimeter, and there's at least 20 or 30 feet between the panels, I believe, and the fence. I'm trying to think if there might have been one narrow spot back here, but there's a lot of space around the panels as well.
Is there any area that was cleared that isn't represented on the to be paid for area? Mike?
No, this one's a little different from the other site, that we have the other solar lease site, which was in a low area or low contour areas, so there were hills around it, and they deforested a lot of the original land to make sure they had the sunlight coming into where the solar panels were. This site's different, this one's up on a hill, so they could put their perimeter fence just tightly around the panels themselves. They also in the lease area include landscape areas that were required by the planning board as part of the site plan application. They do have areas outside the fence that are in these hatched areas, but those areas are the forested stormwater buffer areas that were required as part of their DEP stormwater permit. So those are outside the fence area, they're part of the lease, but they're designated forested buffers that can't be touched. And where it wraps around in this direction is surrounding a wetland. They stayed out of the wetland, they put the fence as a barrier between the two. So this site, just the contours of the site lended itself much better towards the limited disturbed area. So they have fenced in all the areas that they disturbed, and even areas beyond that are part of the lease because it's part of their DEP permitting.
Thank you, Mike.
How much of the original leased land are we now not leasing? The original lease was for the entire site.
Yeah,
So how much of?
In the lease provisions, there was a development period and then the lease period. The development period was from the date they signed the original lease. Period of time for all their permitting and construction, right to the date where they flip the switch and go into operation. So that was a 3-year period, they did it in less, and that original lease area was everything you see here in yellow. So I believe it was a total of 48 acres.
I don't have a calculation
Yeah.
on it with me, but that sounds right.
It
I
was-
do have the original lease here, and it goes by, it references the lots and was not as specific as what we have now. It was not based on a survey.
And the reduced lease area is it's a little more than half that, it's about
It's
half.
21 acres.
Yeah.
So of the remaining land that now the town owns, do we have access to that?
That was one of the last, actually revisions we made to the proposed lease area because it was silent. There was language in there for the preservation of our storage building, because there is a building on the site that we maintain and we keep stored items in that building. And that was clear in the lease, that was reserved to the town, but it was silent on access across the former Abenaki Trail Road. And that was one of the revisions that Leah and I worked on with the lease language to make sure that that was retained. So there is a town gate at the end, so there's no motor vehicle access to it, but pedestrians, as they do now in the area, can walk across that existing old paved road and then right off the end of the old cul-de-sac, access all the town land.
So we have access to that backland.
And we have access off the end of Pine Ledge Drive too, in this area, so there's 2 points of access here, across the old cul-de-sac and back, and here you could even walk along a little strip of land here, but that's a little thick.
Just one quick correction, the town actually still owns all of it.
Yeah,
We're
I know.
releasing, but I know what you mean.
I just wanna make sure that we haven't reduced the size and now have no access to the land.
Understood, yes.
And there was concern on that originally when the lease was being proposed to make sure that there would be remaining town land for hunting purposes. The river, Webpanet River is right along the border on the side, and it's some prime hunting area and hiking area, and
There's actually a trail back there, right?
and there's a nice trail that goes along the river, so it was always contemplated that of course the entire property wouldn't be leased and that we would have some conservation land left.
Anything else?
We're good to go, as long as we got that access, that's
All right,
my main concern.
I will trouble you no longer.
thank you for your presentation.
I'll trouble Leah, yeah, if you, I can leave this document for signature if you like,
Yeah,
is that,
that'd be
yeah,
great.
sure, and then you'll,
And so they can move to accept it and authorize Mike to sign.
yep, and then I have marked up on this one, this
So
is my
you-
original, but you
you're
can do a
signing a
page
new page.
substitution, yeah.
Perfect.
You want me to leave this, or do you want me to leave it?
And just one version and then.
Yep, that's got that markup on it, but that's the one that my guy has signed.
Excellent.
And then we will do the memorandum of lease, once, I want
Oh, I was
to
gonna say,
record the
Understood,
plans as we've described, because it references the plans, so the
Yes,
sequence would be
understood,
record plans first, okay,
okay.
great. I think that's it.
I think so too, but with respect to the exhibit B, do you want him to sign it as well, or are you waiting
If you're
to
if
get
you're
it?
willing to, that's fine.
Yeah.
That'll save us a little bit
Yeah,
of
I
time
think so.
later.
Yep.
And then we can obviously hold that for recording with the plans anyway, so.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Yep.
great,
Thanks.
thank you, everybody,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Motion here.
Yeah, if we get a motion,
I make a motion that we accept the agreement as amended and authorize the town manager to sign on behalf of the town.
all those in favor? 301.
Thank you, good evening.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Discussion and action to schedule a public hearing concerning possible amendments to the town code relating to its marijuana provisions. Leah, Mike, you wanna kick this off?
Go ahead for us, I think.
Mike, you can come right up here.
Other Mike.
Which mic, any mic?
Do you want me to go for it?
Yes.
Yes, okay, alright, so the reason we are here is because it was determined that there's a definition in the town code for registered marijuana dispensaries that was based on the definition back in 2011. And at that time, the state of the law was that the state would only have issued, I believe, and I'm gonna get the number wrong, but a limited number of dispensaries in the entire state. And I think that number was somewhere between 8 and 11 at that time. And it was even further allocated as to counties. And so when this definition was enacted, it was specifically contemplated that there could not be more than 1 or 2, I think, and we'll clarify that number, in the town. And that is what the state was, and that was the thought when it was being enacted. And so at this point, because the definition of dispensary has changed under the state law since it was enacted in 2011 in the town, there needs to be some clarification as to how many dispensaries are permitted in order to be consistent with what was originally enacted. And so that is what the purpose is for our discussion, and whether the town wants to have some kind of clarification ordinance drafted, which is permitted under the town charter under, I believe it's section 212, which if, in the ordinary course, land use amendments must go to town meeting, but the charter specifically contemplates if there is an issue that requires clarification, and arguably this is just such a circumstance, that the board has the authority to enact that ordinance so long as a majority of both the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, as well as the code enforcement officer and the town planner agree that that clarification is needed. And so I at this point, I am asking the board to give direction as to whether or not they would like to have such a clarification ordinance enacted, or I should say drafted for your consideration, and whether that should be a retroactive ordinance back to the date that it would be considered.
Well, I would be in favor of that.
I am not. I think that there's some language that needs to be cleaned up regarding the zones that it's allowed, but I can't accept it. I can't support it, I should say.
Is there a motion to be made?
I can make a motion yet, you wanna make a motion?
Yeah.
I move to authorize the town attorney to draft a retroactive ordinance pursuant to its authority under 2-2 of the 2-12 of the town charter to clarify that the number of registered medical marijuana dispensaries allowed in the town of Wells shall be limited to that number that was allowed when the original ordinance amendments were enacted in 2011.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? 3-1, motion passes. So we'll go ahead and line that meeting up. Pull everybody together, get the appropriate
So that'll
postings
be a
done.
joint public,
Yeah, so the way I conceive of it just procedurally, you've asked me to draft that motion for you, amendment or ordinance for your consideration at your next meeting, which is the 20th. You consider it, and at that point, you determine, you call that public hearing for those various boards. So you would call the public hearing at the next meeting, not to be held at the next meeting, but to schedule it at the next meeting.
should we put the retroactive date in the
Yes, and what
proposal
what I recommend is
with
always.
a motion?
Pardon me?
Should it have been in the motion?
No, I think what I'm saying is that when I present you the ordinance, what we recommend generally is that the retroactivity date be to the date when it's first entertained and considered, which would be the December 20th date.
Excellent. Alrighty. Thank you, Leah. And next we have discussion and action to schedule a public hearing on adoption of general assistance ordinance appendices A through G. GA maximums were approved on October 4th. There have also been a number of changes to section 2.2, special definitions of the GA ordinance. The state encourages municipalities to hold a public hearing for adoption of these revisions to the general assistance ordinance. Any discussion?
No.
Okay, we want to have a public
Move
hearing.
to schedule a public hearing on December 20th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the Littlefield Meeting Room at 208 Sanford Road on adoption of the general assistance ordinance amendments.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Next, we have discussion and action on approval of the 2023 meeting calendar. Any questions, concerns?
I just have one, I did have the planning board review the calendar as well, and they observed that there was a planning board meeting scheduled for July 3rd. July 4th is on a Tuesday this year, so they suggested that I thought I might have a trouble getting a quorum for that planning board meeting, so they were asking that in the July 2023 calendar that the dates between the planning board and the zoning board of appeals just get swapped.
We're meeting the day after, so I mean,
You meaning the fifth?
yeah.
Oh, and Bob was here on his 70th birthday, what's wrong with them?
It's my grandson's 4th birthday tonight, I'm missing cake.
You were supposed to change that. You missed a lot of cake lately.
I did. I don't need it, but
Any objection to that? No objection. All right,
Thank you.
just a
absolutely.
little levity.
Well, we have a motion to approve with as amended.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? 4-0, thank you. Next, we have discussion and action on updates, personnel and committee assignments, resignations and issues. We have a resignation of Catherine Mooney from the Harbor Advisory Committee, and we have a resignation of Jerrilyn Mullen from the Personnel Advisory Committee.
I move to accept the resignations and write a letter thanking them for their service.
Second.
All those in favor? Is it 4-0?
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Moving on, we have discussion and action to accept donations and bequests. We have the first being a $300 donation from Rosella Morrow to the town of Wells for the Fuel Assistance Program Fund. The second being a $99.62 donation from the Wells Rotary to the Wells Public Library for purchase of children's books. We have a $20 donation from Robert Hannigan to the town of Wells for the Fuel Assistance Program Fund. We have a $500 donation from the Congregational Church of Wells to the town of Wells for the Fuel Assistance Program Fund.
I move to accept the generous donations and write a letter of thanks to the donors. Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Next is discussion and action on approving the minutes of the November 15th, 2022 Selectmen's Meeting. Cindy had some streaming issues and is still working on the October 31st and November 1st meeting minutes. Cindy, we know it's a lot of work. We thank you for doing it. Is there any concerns surrounding the November 15th? Everything look good?
Yep.
Perfect.
I move for approval of the November 15th, 2022 Selectmen Meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Next, for the second time this evening, we have open to the public for 10 minutes. We ask anybody that'd like to speak to keep it to 3 minutes. Would any members of the public like to speak at this time?
I'd just like to take 1 minute to, I wanted to thank publicly the Wells High School Art Department for accepting our challenge to come down to the fire station and paint our fire station doors. So they did that with a holiday festive paintings, and we asked them to do that, and they decided to cooperate, and they wanna continue to do it, so we're gonna try to make it a tradition. So I just wanted to thank them for coming over and doing that. We appreciate it.
Excellent. Awesome.
It is awesome.
Anything else? Seeing none, we'll move on to the town manager's report. Mike?
Thank you. Some very quick but really kind of nice things to acknowledge. A snapshot in the day of the Wells Public Library, and this was done for every library throughout the state. I can't tell you the exact date, unfortunately, but I want to just share with you a little bit that Cindy shared with me. On this particular day, they welcomed 399 people. They loaned 268 books, movies, and more, gave 29 people access to our public computers, and had 53 access the internet through our wireless networks. They answered 10 questions, they offered 2 programs, and had 38 people participate. And there's some numbers in here too that talk about what happened throughout the state as well. But I think it's a real good indicator about how many people are served by our library, how busy our folks that work at the library are, and so it's very nice to see. Another letter that Cindy shared with me, an email that she received dated November 16th. I'll leave out the person's name, but it talks about a longtime library patron passed away last week, so prior to the 16th. She used our outreach services for a long time, over 5 years. We helped pick out titles for her and provided home pickup and delivery. Sarah Hamlin did this for a while, and then Jade Austin, our current outreach staff person, took over. A member of the person who passed away's family stopped by last evening and dropped the attached thank you note. I thought I'd share it with you, and therefore I'd like to share it with you and the public. A family of this person extends heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the Wells Public Library and the outreach program. She was an avid reader Your bringing her books and making suggestions was most appreciated and helped enrich her days. Just one of the many reasons Wells is such a great town, signed by the family. So something really nice to see. Chief Putnam received yet another letter, and this was from Superintendent James Daly, and it was talking about expressing his sincere appreciation for Wells Police Department for their assistance and cooperation yesterday, which happened to be the day of the Sanford incident. During the situation in a neighboring town which impacted Wells Community School District, school resource officers Stephanie Marini and TJ Wright worked quickly and efficiently to provide support for administrators, staff, and students. It is reassuring to know we have such dedicated professionals in our community who can be relied upon in times of crisis. We're very proud to have you serve our community. Something really very nice. And then lastly, someone wrote to commend the board and also to Ms. Adams and Chief Dupuy about the work that you've done on Near Beach and just the diligence that you put in. I am thankful to have them in their respective positions, grateful to them and their staff persevering through hours and hours of questioning, repeated visits, et cetera, to the business. And so they just signed as a neighbor to Near Beach. So congratulations and recognition to the board and those two folks who put a lot of effort into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. It's all good to hear. Let's see.
I forgot one, sorry, John.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Basketball starts Friday at the school. People like to hear when, so girls' basketball plays Friday. I guess what I just got, it was JV got canceled, the Cape doesn't have enough kids grow up, so it's just a varsity game at 6:30. Wrestling's up at Belfast, I don't know if you wanna take the trip with that. And then I think boys won't be home until the next Tuesday, so they're away Friday, but the boys will be home Tuesday. Track, and we actually have a ski team too, so I don't know when exactly they start, they usually start after the Christmas break, so. There is some events you can attend if that's what you're looking for at the high school. Girls team, I saw them in a scrimmage, they look very good, and the boys team's looking pretty good too, so it might be an interesting winter to come watch some games if you're interested.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Tim. And anybody else have anything they'd like to contribute? Seeing none, the next up is adjournment. Do we have motion?
We adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Thank you, folks, and we'll see you next time. Have a good evening.
Yeah, Mike, could you